I woke up from a 2-week coma expecting my husband to be relieved I was alive. Instead, I found him holding my sister's hand, and they both looked guilty as hell. But what the doctor told us next made their little affair the least of my problems. You know that moment when you wake up and for just a split second you forget where you are? That disorienting feeling where reality hasn't quite caught up with your consciousness yet? Well, imagine that feeling. But you've been unconscious for 2 solid weeks, and when your eyes finally flutter open, the first thing you see is your husband of 6 years holding hands with your younger sister. My name is Maya Chen, and I'm about to tell you a story that will make you question everything you think you know about the people closest to you. 3 months ago, I was living what I thought was a pretty normal life in Denver, Colorado. I had a successful career in marketing, a beautiful house in the suburbs, and a marriage that, while not perfect, seemed solid enough. My husband Derek Thompson and I had been together for 6 years, married for 4 of those. Derek works in finance, one of those guys who wears expensive suits and talks about market trends at dinner parties. We've been trying to have a baby for over a year with no luck, but we figured it would happen when it was meant to happen. Then there's my sister Stella. Stella Chen is 4 years younger than me, and she's always been the free spirit of our family. While I was climbing the corporate ladder, Stella was teaching yoga classes and talking about chakras and energy healing. She's the kind of person who shows up to family dinners with crystals in her purse and insists on blessing the food before we eat. Our parents, Robert and Linda Chen, always said we were like night and day. But despite our differences, Stella and I were close, or at least I thought we were. But let me get back to that moment when I woke up. Picture this. You're lying in a sterile hospital bed, machines beeping around you, your throat dry as sandpaper because you haven't had water in 2 weeks. The fluorescent lights are too bright, and everything feels foggy and strange. You expect to see your husband's face light up with relief, maybe some tears of joy, definitely a huge hug, and promises that everything's going to be okay now that you're awake. Instead, I watched Derek and Stella practically jump away from each other like they'd been caught stealing. Derek's face went completely white. Not the pale you get from worry, but the kind of pale you get when you've been caught red-handed doing something you absolutely shouldn't be doing. And Stella? My own sister couldn't even look me in the eye. She suddenly became very interested in the floor tiles, her yoga-toned arms wrapped tightly around herself like she was trying to hold in some terrible secret. "Maya! Oh my God, you're awake," Derek said. But his voice had this weird pitch to it, like he was forcing enthusiasm he didn't actually feel. He moved toward my bed, but not with the rushed relief of a loving husband. It was more like the careful approach of someone who wasn't sure what kind of reception they were going to get. "Hey, sis," Stella finally managed to say, but she still wouldn't look directly at me. Her usually confident voice was small and shaky. "We've been so worried about you." We. The way she said "we" made my stomach turn, even in my weakened state. There was something intimate about it, something that suggested they'd been a unit while I was unconscious, facing this crisis together in a way that felt wrong on every level. I tried to speak, but my voice came out as barely a whisper. What happened? How long was I out? 2 weeks, Derek said, sitting down in the chair next to my bed. The same chair where, moments before, he'd been holding my sister's hand. "You were in a car accident, Maya. We thought we might lose you." But here's the thing that really got to me. The way he said it didn't sound like a man who'd been terrified of losing his wife. It sounded like a man who'd been dealing with a complicated situation that had just gotten even more complicated now that I was awake. And that's when Dr. Harrison walked into the room with a manila folder in his hands and an expression that would change everything we thought we knew about my accident. Before I tell you about what happened in that hospital room, you need to understand what my life looked like before everything fell apart. Because the person I was 3 months ago feels like a completely different woman now. Derek and I met 7 years ago at a networking event downtown. I was there representing my marketing firm, and he was schmoozing potential clients for his financial planning business. I remember thinking he was exactly the kind of guy my parents would love. Stable, successful, well-dressed, and ambitious. He drove a BMW, owned a condo in a nice part of town, and talked about 5-year plans like they were gospel. After years of dating creative types who couldn't commit to weekend plans, Derek's reliability felt like a breath of fresh air. Our relationship moved fast, maybe too fast in hindsight. We were engaged within 18 months and married 6 months after that. Derek said he didn't see the point in waiting when he knew what he wanted. I was swept up in his confidence, in the way he seemed to have everything figured out. We bought a gorgeous 4-bedroom house in Highlands Ranch, complete with a 2-car garage and a backyard perfect for the kids we planned to have. And that's where things started getting complicated. We'd been trying to get pregnant for 14 months with no success. Every negative pregnancy test felt like a small failure, and Derek was getting increasingly frustrated with the whole process. He's not the kind of man who handles things being out of his control very well. He wanted to schedule fertility testing, map out ovulation cycles, turn the whole thing into a project he could manage and optimize. I just wanted it to happen naturally, which led to more tension between us than I care to admit. Derek had always been the practical one in our relationship. He balanced our checkbook, planned our vacations, and made sure our retirement accounts were properly diversified. I was the creative dreamer, always coming up with new marketing campaigns and talking about maybe starting my own agency someday. We used to joke that we balanced each other out, but lately it felt more like we were pulling in opposite directions. My sister Stella had always been supportive of our relationship, even though she and Derek couldn't be more different. While Derek was all about quarterly reports and investment portfolios, Stella was teaching sunrise yoga classes and selling handmade jewelry at farmers markets. She'd tease Derek about being too uptight, and he'd roll his eyes at her crystal collections, but they seemed to get along well enough at family gatherings. The night of my accident, I had been driving home from a client meeting that ran late. It was one of those October storms that Denver gets sometimes, where the rain comes down so hard you can barely see the car in front of you. I remember being tired, stressed about a campaign deadline, and honestly, a little frustrated about another argument Derek and I had that morning about scheduling a doctor's appointment to discuss our fertility issues. The last thing I clearly remember is merging onto I-25, windshield wipers working overtime, radio playing some pop song I'd heard 1,000 times, then nothing. Just complete blackness for 2 weeks. When I woke up in that hospital bed, my body felt like it belonged to someone else. My muscles were weak, my mouth was dry, and I had this strange, disconnected feeling, like I was watching everything happen to someone else. The doctors later explained that coma patients often experience disorientation and memory gaps, but what I was feeling went beyond medical explanations. There was something different about Derek and Stella, something in the way they moved around each other, the way they seemed to communicate without speaking. You know how couples develop their own language over time? The way they can have entire conversations with just looks and gestures? That's what I was seeing between my husband and my sister, and it made my stomach hurt in a way that had nothing to do with being unconscious for 2 weeks. Derek kept saying all the right things. How worried he'd been, how glad he was that I was okay, how the doctors said I was lucky to be alive. But his eyes kept darting to Stella, like he was checking to make sure she was okay with whatever he was saying. And Stella, who had always been the hugger in our family, the one who showed affection easily, was keeping her distance from my bed, like she was afraid to get too close. Something had fundamentally changed while I was unconscious, and I was about to find out just how deep that change went. Over the next few hours, as nurses came and went checking my vitals, I started paying closer attention to Derek and Stella's behavior. And what I saw made my blood run cold, even though I was still too weak to do much about it. First, there were the little things. Derek knew exactly how Stella liked her coffee. 2 sugars, oat milk, no foam, and he brought it to her without being asked. When had my husband started memorizing my sister's coffee order? Stella had somehow developed this habit of touching Derek's arm when she spoke to him, these casual little gestures that seemed way too comfortable for a sister-in-law relationship. Then there were the inside jokes. Derek mentioned something about that movie we watched, and Stella immediately started laughing about some scene I'd apparently missed. What movie? When did they watch movies together, and why did they both look guilty when they realized I was listening? But the thing that really got to me was watching them move around each other in my hospital room. They had developed this choreography, this natural rhythm like dance partners who'd been practicing together. When Derek got up to adjust my blanket, Stella automatically moved to give him space. When the nurse needed to check my IV, they both stepped back in perfect sync without even looking at each other. You don't develop that kind of seamless coordination overnight. "Stella, how long have you been here?" I asked, my voice still raspy from the breathing tube they'd removed that morning. "Oh, on and off," she said, suddenly very interested in reorganizing the flowers on my bedside table. Derek needed support during this whole ordeal. Support. That word sat wrong with me. Since when did Derek need emotional support from my sister? Derek was the guy who prided himself on handling everything independently. He was the one who never asked for help, who insisted on changing his own oil and doing our taxes by hand because he didn't trust anyone else to do it right. "I've basically been living at your house," Stella continued, and my heart stopped. Someone had to take care of things while Derek was here with you every day. Living at our house? Derek must have seen my expression because he jumped in quickly. "Just temporarily, Maya. She's been handling your mail, watering the plants, that kind of stuff. I thought it would be better than leaving everything empty." That's when I noticed Stella was wearing my necklace, not borrowing it, wearing it like it belonged to her. It was the delicate gold chain Derek had given me for our second anniversary, with a small diamond pendant that caught the light. I'd never taken it off, which meant someone had removed it while I was unconscious. "Stella," I said quietly, "why are you wearing my necklace?" Her hand flew to her throat like she'd been burned. "Oh my God, Maya, I'm so sorry. Derek said I could wear it while you were—" She looked at Derek helplessly. "We didn't know if you were going to—" "If I was going to what?" My voice was getting stronger now, fueled by a growing anger that was burning through my physical weakness. "If I was going to wake up? If I was going to live?" Derek stepped forward, his hands raised like he was trying to calm down a dangerous animal. "Maya, you're getting upset over nothing. Stella just helped me through a really dark time. We were both terrified we were going to lose you." "We were both terrified," I repeated slowly. There's that word again. The silence in the room was deafening. I could hear the machines beeping, could hear someone's TV playing a game show down the hall, could hear my own heart pounding in my ears. Derek and Stella exchanged another one of those looks, the kind that said they were having a conversation I wasn't part of. "Maya," Stella said finally, her yoga instructor voice taking on that patronizing tone she used when she was trying to convince someone to buy into her New Age philosophies. "You've been through a trauma. Maybe we should wait until you're feeling stronger before we have heavy conversations." Heavy conversations? About my husband and sister getting cozy while I was fighting for my life? About her wearing my jewelry and living in my house, and apparently becoming Derek's emotional support system? "No," I said, surprising myself with how firm my voice sounded. "I want to have this conversation now. I want to know exactly what happened while I was gone, and I want the truth." That's when they finally told me they had gotten close during my coma, but the way they said it made it clear there was so much more they weren't telling me. The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. I could see Derek calculating his response, weighing his options the same way he approached every business decision. But I wasn't some client he could charm or manipulate with financial projections. I was his wife, and I deserved the truth. "Sit down," I said, my voice carrying an authority that surprised all three of us. "Both of you, right now." Derek started to protest. "Maya, you just woke up, you need to rest, and we should really wait for the doctor to—" "Sit down," I repeated, each word deliberate and sharp. "I've been unconscious for 2 weeks. I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you until I get answers." Something in my tone must have convinced them because they both reluctantly took seats. Derek in the chair beside my bed, Stella perched uncomfortably on the small couch by the window. The distance between them seemed calculated now, like they were trying to appear less connected than they actually were. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever I was about to hear. "I want you to tell me exactly what happened while I was in this coma, day by day if you have to, and don't you dare lie to me, because I can already tell when you're not being honest." Derek ran his hands through his hair, a nervous habit I'd seen 1,000 times over the years. Maya, it's not what you think. Nothing inappropriate happened. Define inappropriate, I shot back. Because from where I'm lying, my sister wearing my jewelry and living in my house while my husband learns her coffee order seems pretty damn inappropriate. Stella finally looked up from her lap, tears starting to form in her eyes. Maya, please. You have to understand how scared we were. The doctors said you might not wake up. They said even if you did, you might not be the same person. So you decided to play house while I was unconscious? It wasn't like that. Derek stood up abruptly, then immediately sat back down when he saw my expression. Stella was grieving too. She needed somewhere to stay, somewhere she could feel close to you. And I couldn't handle being alone in that house, knowing you might never come home. So you comforted each other, I said flatly. The silence stretched between us. I watched Derek and Stella exchange another one of those loaded glances, and I realized they were still trying to decide how much to tell me. Yes, Stella whispered finally. We comforted each other. How? The question came out harder than I intended, but I was past the point of caring about anyone's feelings except my own. Derek shifted in his chair, suddenly looking like a teenager who'd been caught sneaking out past curfew. We talked a lot. About you, about how much we missed you. Stella helped me understand some things about you that I'd never really gotten before. What kind of things? Like how you always wanted to start your own marketing agency, but were afraid to tell me because you thought I'd worry about the financial risk, Stella said softly. Or how you pretended you didn't mind that we weren't getting pregnant, but you cried in the shower sometimes because you thought you were letting Derek down. My chest tightened. Those were private thoughts. Private moments I'd never shared with anyone. The fact that Derek was discussing our intimate struggles with my sister felt like another violation. So you bonded over my secrets, I said. How touching. Maya, please. Derek leaned forward, reaching for my hand, but I pulled it away. It wasn't supposed to happen, but spending all that time together, worrying about you, sharing memories of you, we developed feelings for each other. There it was. Finally. The admission I'd been dreading, but somehow knew was coming. Feelings, I repeated, tasting the word like poison. What kind of feelings, Derek? He looked at Stella, and I saw her give him the tiniest nod. Permission to tell the truth, or at least part of it. We fell in love, he said simply. We didn't mean to, we didn't want to, but it happened. The monitor next to my bed started beeping faster as my heart rate spiked. A nurse poked her head in, but I waved her away. I needed to hear this, needed to understand the full scope of their betrayal. And what exactly did you plan to do about these feelings when I woke up? I asked. That's when Dr. Harrison walked in with his manila folder, saving them from having to answer the question that would have destroyed what was left of our family. Dr. Harrison's entrance changed the entire energy in the room. He wasn't wearing his usual reassuring smile, and the manila folder in his hands seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. His expression was the kind doctors wear when they're about to deliver news that changes everything. I'm glad you're both here, he said to Derek and Stella, completely oblivious to the emotional bombshell that had just exploded between us. Please sit back down. I need to discuss Maya's test results with all of you. Derek immediately shifted into his take-charge mode. Is everything okay, doctor? Are there complications from the coma? Long-term effects we should know about? Something about Derek's rapid-fire questions struck me as odd. Most husbands would be focused on their wife's well-being, not immediately jumping to logistics and long-term planning. But Dr. Harrison seemed focused on something entirely different. The test results are unusual, Dr. Harrison said carefully, opening the folder. Maya, during your initial treatment, we ran comprehensive blood work as part of our standard protocol for accident victims. Those results have raised some serious concerns. I felt my stomach drop. What kind of concerns? Dr. Harrison pulled out a sheet of paper covered in medical jargon and numbers. We found traces of zolpidem in your system. That's the generic name for Ambien. The levels were significant, enough to cause severe drowsiness and impaired motor function. I don't take sleeping pills. I said immediately. "I've never taken Ambien in my life." "That's what your medical records indicate." Dr. Harrison nodded grimly. "Which is why we forwarded our findings to the police. Maya, your accident wasn't caused by weather conditions or mechanical failure. Your brake lines had been cut, and you had been drugged." The room went completely silent except for the steady beeping of my heart monitor, which was now racing. Derek's face had gone from pale to gray, and Stella looked like she might throw up. "I'm sorry, what?" Derek's voice came out as barely a whisper. "Are you saying someone tried to kill Maya?" Dr. Harrison's attention shifted to Derek, and I noticed his expression had changed. There was something calculating in his eyes now, like he was studying Derek's reaction very carefully. "The police have been investigating quietly while Maya was unconscious," Dr. Harrison continued. "They found security footage from your office building, Maya. Someone was tampering with your car the night before your accident." I couldn't breathe. Someone had deliberately tried to kill me. The accident, the coma, the 2 weeks of fighting for my life, none of it had been random. Someone had planned this. "Who?" I managed to ask. "Who would want to hurt me?" Dr. Harrison looked directly at Derek. "That's what Detective Rodriguez would like to discuss with you, Mr. Thompson. She's waiting outside." Derek shot to his feet like he'd been electrocuted. "Wait, you think I had something to do with this? That's insane. I love my wife." "Derek," Stella's voice was barely audible, but something in her tone made everyone turn to look at her. She was crying now, her whole body shaking. "Derek, I can't do this anymore." "Stella, don't." Derek's voice had taken on a threatening edge I'd never heard before. "Don't say anything you'll regret." But Stella was falling apart completely now. "I never thought it would go this far. You said it would just be a small accident, just enough to scare her." The pieces started falling into place in my mind like dominoes. Derek needed money. We'd been struggling more than I knew. My life insurance policy was substantial, enough to pay off the house and set him up comfortably. And Stella, desperate to help her sister's husband through his grief, had been manipulated into helping. "You convinced her I was having an affair," I said, my voice eerily calm. "You made Stella think she was helping save our marriage by giving me a wake-up call." Derek's silence was confirmation enough. Dr. Harrison stepped toward the door. "Mr. Thompson, I think you should speak with Detective Rodriguez now." "Derek, please," Stella was sobbing. "Tell them it was my idea. Tell them you tried to stop me. I'll take the blame. Just please don't let them think you wanted to kill her." Even now, even after discovering the truth, Stella was still trying to protect him. But Derek wasn't looking at her with gratitude. He was looking at her like she'd just ruined everything. "You stupid girl," he said coldly. "You couldn't keep your mouth shut for 5 more minutes." And that's when I realized my husband wasn't just a cheater and an attempted murderer. He was a sociopath who had been playing us both from the very beginning. The next few hours were a blur of police interviews, legal procedures, and phone calls to family members who couldn't believe what they were hearing. Derek was arrested right there in my hospital room, Detective Rodriguez reading him his rights while he stared at me with a cold hatred that made my skin crawl. The man I'd been married to for 6 years, the man I'd trusted with my life, had literally tried to take that life for money. Stella was taken into custody as well, but as a cooperating witness rather than a primary suspect. Watching her being led away in handcuffs, still crying and apologizing, broke my heart in a completely different way than Derek's betrayal. My sister had been manipulated by a master manipulator, but she had still chosen to help him hurt me. The legal process moved faster than I expected. Derek's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the evidence was overwhelming. Security footage showed him tampering with my car. Phone records revealed dozens of calls between him and Stella in the weeks leading up to the accident. Most damning of all, they found the Ambien prescription he'd gotten using a fake name at a pharmacy across town. Derek ultimately pleaded guilty to attempted murder and received a 15-year sentence. Even facing prison time, he never once apologized or showed any remorse. During his sentencing hearing, he actually had the audacity to claim that our marriage problems had driven him to desperation. as if struggling to get pregnant justified trying to murder your wife. Stella's case was more complicated. Her lawyer argued that she'd been emotionally manipulated by Derek, who had convinced her I was having an affair and that a small accident would shock me into recommitting to our marriage. The prosecution agreed that Derek had exploited her grief and loyalty, but she had still participated in attempted murder. She received 3 years probation and 500 hours of community service in exchange for her testimony against Derek. The hardest part wasn't the legal proceedings or the media attention when the story broke. The hardest part was rebuilding my sense of trust in my own judgment. How had I been so wrong about the man I'd married? How had I missed the signs that Derek was capable of something so monstrous? My parents, Robert and Linda Chen, moved in with me for the first month after I was discharged from the hospital. Mom would make my favorite tea and sit with me while I cried about the life I thought I'd had. Dad, ever the practical one, helped me change all the locks and install a security system. They never once said, "I told you so," even though Dad had always thought Derek was too controlling. Therapy helped more than I expected. Dr. Sarah Kim, my counselor, helped me understand that sociopaths are experts at deception. Derek had spent years crafting a persona designed to appeal to what he thought I wanted. The stable, ambitious, reliable man I'd fallen in love with had never really existed. But here's what I want everyone watching this to understand. Surviving something like this doesn't just make you stronger, it makes you more aware of your own strength. During those 2 weeks in the coma, my body fought to stay alive even when my mind wasn't conscious to help. That fighting spirit, that determination to survive, was always part of me. Derek's betrayal didn't create it, and it didn't destroy it. 6 months after the trial ended, I did something I never thought I'd have the courage to do. I started my own marketing agency. Turns out, nearly dying gives you a pretty clear perspective on what risks are actually worth taking. The business is thriving, and I love the independence and creative control I never had working for someone else. I also started dating again, which surprised everyone, including me. James Rivera was one of the nurses who took care of me during my recovery. He's kind, genuine, and patient with my trust issues. We take things slowly, but for the first time in years, I'm in a relationship where I feel valued for who I actually am, not who someone wants me to be. As for Stella, we're working on rebuilding our relationship through family therapy. It's slow going, and I'm not sure we'll ever be as close as we were before, but I understand now that she was as much Derek's victim as I was, just in a different way. The most important lesson I learned is this: trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't ignore red flags because you want someone to be different than they are. And remember, sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the thing that saves you from a life that was slowly killing you anyway. I survived Derek's attempt to murder me, but more importantly, I survived his attempt to control and diminish me. And that survival taught me something invaluable about my own worth and strength. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I know it wasn't easy to hear, and it definitely wasn't easy to live through, but I hope sharing it helps someone out there who might be questioning their own instincts about the people in their life. If this story resonated with you, or if you have your own experiences with betrayal or manipulation that you'd like to share, please leave a comment below. I read every single one, and your stories help create a community of survivors supporting each other. And if you found this video helpful or compelling, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Sometimes we all need a reminder that we're stronger than we think, and that trusting our gut feelings can literally save our lives. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more real stories about overcoming life's biggest challenges. I share new content every week, and there are so many incredible stories of resilience and strength from people just like you and me. Remember, you deserve relationships that honor your worth, and you have the strength to survive whatever life throws at you. Trust yourself, trust your instincts, and never let anyone convince you that you're worth less than everything. I'll see you in the next video. Take care of yourselves, and thank you for being part of this journey with me.